Hello, freshmen. We're going to pick up with our infectious diseases on the different types of pathogens. We're going to talk about 4 different categories of pathogens and really 5 different types of pathogens. On the screen there you can see it's bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, which is broken down to 2 different types, protozoa, and worms. So we're going to go ahead and get started and rolling through this as quick as possible. Don't forget to pause if you need to go long. Okay. So the first is bacteria. So the definition you need for bacteria, they're single-celled organisms. All right, just very simple, small, single-celled organisms that grow and reproduce in and outside of the body. They can be helpful or harmful to body function. So they're everywhere. They're inside, they're outside. They can be good, they can be bad. Most of bacteria are actually helpful. All right, we have lots of bacteria that live in our digestive tract. Okay, that's what kind of helps us break down food. When things get out of whack or that bacteria is not there, that can be a cause for a lot of problems. For instance, lactose intolerant people don't have the right kind of bacteria or enough of it in their system, and that's why consuming dairy products can be very explosive for them or cause a lot of stomach pain, diarrhea, and such. So those bacteria are good. There's several trillion cells that make up your body. All right, 90% of those are bacterial cells. So we have a lot of bacteria in us and on us. All right, but there's just a small portion of bacteria that actually cause diseases. So the cellular structure or characteristics of bacteria, they're 10 to 100 times smaller than other body cells. Okay, so the other cells that make up our body, bone cells, skin cells, muscle tissue cells, bacteria cells are much smaller than those. They have no nucleus in the cell, but each bacteria does have its own specific shape, its own habitat that it likes to live in, and nutritional needs. All right, the bacteria that live in our digestive tract are not going to be bacteria that survive or thrive in other areas of the bodies, such as the brain or the muscles. Most of the cells grow outside of the cell, or most bacteria is actually outside of our cells. It's on our cells, but outside of it, they don't necessarily penetrate into our other cells. Some grow inside, but the immune system usually keeps those in check of how much we need. Treatment for different bacterial diseases, antibiotics. All right, simple antibiotics are going to help cure and take care of bacterial infections. Okay. Familiar bacterial diseases that we deal with, you can try to pronounce that big, nice word there, or you can be like everyone else and call it E. coli. But this resides in animals and in human intestines. The different cause or what it causes is food poisoning. All right, you eat something that has E. coli in it, you become very sick and ill. Staphylococcus aureus. This is carried in our nasal passages. So that's going to spread through sneezing, picking your nose and such. Anything that's going to pass on mucus, basically from one person to the other, can carry these types of diseases. They're going to cause staph infections, MRSA, abscesses or growths of pus under your skin, other infections like pneumonia or bone infections. Viruses. Definition you need there for virus is a pathogen that infects cells and uses their energy because it cannot reproduce and grow on its own. All right, so these are totally dependent on a host cell. Okay, bacteria lived outside of our cell. Viruses actually penetrate into the cell, and they need that cell to be able to live, reproduce, grow. It has no ability to do so on its own. So without a host cell, the virus cannot live or cannot survive. So therefore, scientists actually don't consider viruses as a living organism because it has to have another cell. Kind of the cellular characteristics of these viruses, they're much smaller than bacteria. Okay, so bacteria, again, you can't see with the naked eye. You must have a microscope to see it. Viruses are so much smaller, you need a special type of microscope to be able to see it. They're composed, or what they're made up of, they're wrapped in a protein coat, sometimes further surrounded by fatty membrane, but basically it comes down to viruses are specially packaged duplicating machines. That's what they do. They just want to try to leech on, grow in your cells, and duplicate themselves. There's not much else to a virus. Treatment, well, antibiotics, nope, not going to work. All right. Antiviruses, there are some antiviruses for different viral infections out there, but not for all. And mostly for a virus, you're looking at things that are going to help with the signs and symptoms. It's not actually killing the virus, it's making you feel better. But the virus is still there, you're still contagious. There are vaccines to prevent contracting a virus or becoming infected with a virus, but again, you must have the vaccine prior to becoming infected. Some familiar and less familiar viruses, familiar ones, the common cold and influenza. All right, and so there's the flu shot that you can get. There's some medications that can help relieve the signs and symptoms of the flu and common cold, but you still have the virus. Less familiar viruses, or maybe just the less common ones really, measles, mumps, chickenpox, West Nile virus, those types of things are viruses. So when you contract them, you have that virus in your body, in your system forever. Okay, but there are vaccines for all these different viruses to hopefully help you prevent getting them. Fungi, or the singular fungus, these are more complex. They're larger than what bacteria cells are. They can be multicellular or single cell complex organisms that resemble more like animal cells than bacteria. For instance, these can be made up of mushrooms, mold, and yeast. The cells, there's really two basic types of cells of fungi. There's the cells that specialize in feeding, and then there's the cells that specialize on anchoring to surfaces for it to reproduce. All right, it wants to leech onto something so it can reproduce, whether that's human, plant, animal, soil, whatever. Stick to it, feed off of it, and survive. Fungi infections cause mycosis. Okay, this is a fungal infection that usually attacks damaged or weakened people. So damaged cells or weakened people. So people with low immune systems are the ones that are susceptible to contracting a fungi infection. That's why these are called opportunistic infections. The disease takes advantage of a body's weakened immune system. It doesn't do well trying to live off of a healthy individual. All right, so it might be someone who's already sick, maybe has low counts, blood counts because of a cancer, something like that. Those types of people are going to be more susceptible to contracting fungus infections. Different examples, some of the common, maybe less severe ones that you hear of, ringworm, athlete's foot, even different vaginal yeast infections, but there's more severe ones out there, and just to name one is mucormycosis, there you go, and that is a flesh-eating fungus, so you definitely do not want to deal with that one, and there's others out there that will eat brain. Treatment for all fungus infections, penicillin, some antibiotics will control infections, but penicillin, again, that was a discovery that was accidental in a lab, but then realizing this is a antibiotic that can treat fungus infections, it's still one of the most commonly used today to treat fungus infections, but there's others out there as well. Parasites, broken down in two different categories. There's protozoa and worms. First, kind of lumping them together, parasites are organisms that must live inside or on another living organism. Okay, so they're again not going to survive on their own. To draw upon that organism's strength and energy levels, the two are lumped together not because they're closely related, but because doctors both just refer to protozoa and worms as parasites. But both infect large amounts of people worldwide. So nearly 1/3 of all people infected with roundworms, and more than 1/5 of the world population infected with hookworms, and nearly 300 million infected with malaria parasite. And again, we may not hear these as often in our culture here in the United States because we typically have better health care and environments that we've taken care of to not have these infections. But around the world, these are severe issues. Protozoa, specifically single-celled organisms that are larger and more complex than bacteria. So bacteria tends to be one of the smaller types of pathogens out there, other than a virus. But these, again, are going to cause a disease. They are actually the bottom of a food chain for a lot of different organisms out there. These are eaten and provide nutrients to other organisms, but they can cause some of the most feared diseases out there, again, like malaria, dysentery, which is a severe intestinal infection, and that fun C word of cryptosordium, however you want to say that, I don't know, but it causes severe diarrhea. Treatment, antibiotics, not so much. Antivirals, no, but antiprotozoals are what you're looking at for treatment, so they can be cured. Worms, parasitic worms are multicellular. So the protozoa are usually single-celled. Parasitic worms, multicellular organisms, specialized with specialized tissue and organs. Sorry. These are going to absorb nutrients from a host cell. All right, so they're going to get into the intestines, absorb the nutrients away from the host, causing them to become malnourished and even causing anemia. So it's transmitted through contaminated water or uncooked meat and fish. So eating something that hasn't been thoroughly cooked, cleaned, the water hasn't been sanitized right, those are what's going to cause or allow these worms to survive, and then you consume them, causing malnutrition again, anemia, can even build up so much in number that they block intestines or even start to tear your intestines. Can spread to other body parts like the liver and brain, so not just staying in the digestive tract but moving throughout the body, causing more problems, and treatment for this are antiparasitic medications. Common ones here, again, hookworms. They're going to penetrate through the skin. People that are bare feet come across these. It will penetrate the skin, causing itchiness, anemia, respiratory problems, gastrointestinal problems. Pinworms, kind of a unique case. They may cause itchy anal or vaginal areas, sleeplessness, or abdominal pain. Flukeworms and trichinella worms are very similar, both causing nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, fever, fatigue, almost seeming like food poisoning or flu symptoms. All right, so here's your assignment. Very quickly, I'll try to explain it. You're going to take all the different categories of pathogens we just discussed, and you're going to place them into just 2 categories. All right, so which means you have to look at all the different traits of bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasitic protozoa, and parasitic worms. So what are all the traits, and how can you classify them into just 2 categories? So be specific in explaining why each pathogen falls into the category it did. Be creative in what your parameters were for creating these categories. But each one should have a place. None can be left out of your categories. There's no wrong or right answer here. Just do some critical thinking, put them in, and be able to back it up. All right. Thank you.